Be advised, suspect is armed and considered extremely dangerous.
Welcome to the Safety Doc Podcast with author, radio host, and nationally recognized safety expert, Dr. David Perrodin. Join us each week as we discuss the best and most bizarre practices in safety preparation and crisis response. Follow Dr. Perrodin on Twitter at SafetyPhD. And remember, the truth will keep you safe.
Hey everybody, this is your good friend Dr. David Perrodin from down here in the historic North Star Recording Studio. Wishing you well on this Sunday evening. So some updates. We did finally get some rain here in southern Wisconsin. Kind of a quasi drought. Lawn was going dormant, but over the last 2 days, actually since about noon yesterday, we've probably received about an inch and a quarter of rain. So the lawn is already starting to green up. So I think I'm in good shape. Going forward with that, usually the lawn kind of slows down this time of year. Anyway, so yes, there's a flood watch, although it looks like we're not going to have anything kind of new coming in. So where I'm at, we haven't had a significant amount of rain, but right here is Ron Wayne, which kind of sounds like rain, but it's actually Ron Wayne, the Kentucky Batman. So welcome, Ron Wayne. So welcome. I have my Brewers hat on because the Milwaukee Brewers are 73-44, the best record in Major League Baseball, and won again today. So yes, this is kind of the old style logo, well, not like the vintage logo, which they kind of brought back, but probably the one that they used more like in the 90s. Real creative, right? Like an M with a little barley leaf or something underneath it. But yes, this is my only Brewers apparel. But good job, Milwaukee Brewers. They can just close the roof on the stadium there if they need to. Water still leaks into it. So today, when they played, it was a sellout of about 43,000, but 33,000 showed up for the game. There were several areas of Milwaukee flooded. Areas of the parking lot were flooded at the stadium. So, and there was quite a bit of damage in northern Wisconsin. So, where we vacation up in Door County, they had substantial damage yesterday from storms. Actually, a lighthouse we go to, Cana Island, C-A-N-A, if you Google it, Cana Island Lighthouse, people are actually stranded. So you have to go over this causeway and they bring you in because it's on Lake Michigan and it's elevated. They bring you in on a tractor pulling like a little hay wagon. And apparently, I mean, this like hit fast. And 30% of the trees on Cana Island fell yesterday. So then people were rushed into a visitor center, which was built in the last like 2 or 3 years because we go there on a pretty frequent basis. And a tree fell on top of that. But I mean, that was built to be weather secure. And then it was like 11 o'clock last night before they got everybody off. And I'm assuming they probably took them by boat because going into Cana Island, the roads are very narrow and there's trees all over the place. And that's one thing they said, trees are down everywhere. So it's Misty Mrs. Wayne. So an autograph fire engine. Holy smokes. I don't know if I could autograph these. So let me tell you what I'm doing. So I put this little card together. You can read it. HO scale, if the camera is willing to focus on it. It might not be. See how the camera's feeling. HO scale plastic fire trucks display models, not toys. $25 for all, sold as a set. So let me show you the ones I'm getting rid of. So first of all, this one is just, I mean, it's made well. But this one is obviously, out of proportion, but this is metal, this one. But let me kind of bring you into the trucks. So there are a couple brands that make these. I don't know if it's listed on the bottom of this. Not really. Maybe it is. I don't know. I can't make that out anyway. But so there was a while when I was collecting these HO fire engines, and these are made of plastic. They're very highly defined, and they're made to go with HO railroad sets. So what you'd have then is your display of your city and your fire department, right? And you try to make it look as realistic as possible. And you would buy then these. So I bought these kind of one by one on eBay over the last, well, not I haven't done anything recently, but maybe like 15 years ago, I started buying these. And what I had basically was like, about 10 of them on my desk. And I made sure to have a pretty well-rounded fire department. So this is a brush truck. And as you can see, they're very, very detailed and very good condition. These aren't meant to be played with. They are plastic. So, they're not meant to have kind of like a Matchbox quality where kids would take them. They wouldn't last long. But on eBay, you can find these identical figures, these HO figures, and they sell for about $15. So I'm asking $25 for like 9 of them total. So let me show you. I'll go through getting rid of this one also. And I'll kind of get into why I'm getting rid of these. So this is a pumper with a crew cab. And that's not very common. I think that's like a Seagrave engine right there, pumper. So got more in here for you. This is another kind of like brush truck or like utility truck. I like them where they have the lights in the back. So this is kind of a rare one. Now let me get into, got a couple more here. Here's another pumper. As you can tell, like these are just very detailed. This is a longer ladder truck. Not a ladder truck. It's a truck that has a has a ladder on it. It's really a hose truck. It's a pumper. This truck has shown a little bit of like fatigue on the tanks. This is the only tanker I have, the water tanker. So it's kind of going off color there, the chrome, but everything is like fine on this other than that. Got a few more here. This is the only aerial I have. So this is just a straight up ladder. This one is made of metal. I never kind of figured out the ladder on this one though. So it comes out, but if you keep going, like it just pulls all the way out. And it doesn't kind of stay. It is a nice truck. Again, this one is made out of metal, and I don't know what the brand is. It said it's made in Kentucky, so it must be good. So it's a Pierce Quint. So if you just would buy this on eBay, an HO scale, this one in the condition it is with the US flag on the front, like these are $20 easily just for this one. And then I've got 2 more here. These are basically pairs, pumpers, but a little different paint scheme on them. So again, all HO scale, which is the smaller railroad scale. And let me kind of get them back in the box. I don't want any rolling off here and be like, well, how much is that one worth? I don't know. Not worth as much as it was a minute ago. All right, back in the box. Okay, so I think I showed you like 9. I kept 2. I'll show you the 2 that I'm keeping. I got to figure out how to fold this box. It's a small box to show you. So that's it. So I've also thought about maybe like putting those on eBay. Oh, I didn't put the card in there with the because I think they would sell. And I guess I've got to check the post office for, they have the box where if you can fit anything in it, it's like whatever, $9 to mail. I'm sure that's gone up. But yeah, the detail is amazing, says Ron Wayne. And look at Misty, Mrs. Wayne. Welcome. It is the Waynes. Welcome, welcome. So here are the two that I'm keeping. And I'll tell you the story behind the two. Well, actually, I have three that I'm keeping. But so this is all metal. And this is, like a 1950s pumper is basically what this would be. And there would be like a hose reel back here, but this is all metal and has rubber tires. So this one was on a birthday cake, like when I was in my 40s. My wife had put this on a birthday cake, and so it has sentimental value, plus it's just a really cool looking truck. So I'll put that one back. So I put these things on my desk, not really for inspiration, like to write, but just to make it a little more homey down here. And this, of course, is from Thomas the Tank. So right here, Thomas the Tank, right? And this belonged to my daughter when she had all of her Thomas the Tank. And here's the little magnet on the back and her different Thomas the Tank collection, her train collection. She's turning 19 tomorrow, actually. So, and when we get rid of that, I pulled this one out and said, nope, I'm keeping the fire truck. So I have to spread these out a little bit here. Guys be like, hey, you parked them too close. We can't get in. We can't get the door open. Okay. And then I also have one more. This is just a tiny one. So this is a fire truck that was made out of like a can, right? And we got this on vacation, and I forget, like Chile or some country that this little shop imports these things that are made. So this is made out of a sardine can or something like this, a little tiny fire engine. I just thought it was kind of cool. So when I look at this, it reminds me of the trip. And I know the store that we bought it at, and we always have a good time on that vacation. So like that has a fundamental, value to it, to me. So let me figure out where I'm going to put that thing. Everything's kind of in flux in the office right now because I ordered a few things, including the, I ordered a small green clock for the desk. That's actually pretty cool because it's like 2 inches tall and like 5 inches long. And I'm not sure. I know where I'm going to put it, but I'm not quite sure. And what I needed was, I think I talked about this before, is I needed a quick way to ascertain what the time was, because I can't read the stuff that's in the tray. It's too small for me. And then I can't like be going to my phone and like way over to the right is an analog clock on the wall. And I can't be like, trying to check that up. Plus the lighting is really bad over there. So I can't make that out very well. So with the university work that I do, and you just need to know, what time it is. So that was a quick solution. And that is, we'll plug into an outlet on the right side here. So that'll be good. But when that comes in, I have to kind of shift the desk up a little bit. And then I don't know how I'll do the layout. I'm trying to consolidate. I have three of these. I have three different coffee cups. So this one is actually metal. And of course, then I just have my pens. Here, I'll show you all three. So here's my Lambeau Field one, which I like. It's like a 3D raised, and it's an older version of Lambeau Field before they did expansion. And then here is from my good friend Robert Travis at Rooftop Life Rafts. So, I got my highlighters in here. What I'm thinking I can do is combine the highlighters in the Lambeau Field one, and just go to like 2. I don't think I need to have 10 yellow highlighters. But so yeah, so the other, fire trucks have a little bit of a background to them, but the ones I showed you initially, I just bought to put on my desk, and I thought it would look kind of cool. But a few things. One is it adds clutter to the desk. I mean, to keep it should really be across like 2 or 3 stations. All those fire trucks should be deployed, but and they get dusty. So those things are not easy to clean. So I have to bring out a little compressed air and like a little Swiffer cloth and just to keep those clean. And then because they're plastic, just like I showed you with the tanker, they do age. So while it was kind of cool, like I don't have any emotional connection to those. So if I put them on eBay, I'm almost certain I could sell those. Like I said, anyone who's like looking at those, my plan is to put them in the garage sale and put $25. Anyone looking at one of the individual trucks would see that, $15 is the typical asking price on eBay, not including shipping. And they just seem to be going up in price. And people use those again with their kind of HO railroad sets and things like that. So like I had to look a while to find like these. So Ron Wayne is saying I use a soft toothbrush to clean my collectibles. Wow. So that's a good idea. I do have a very soft shaving brush, like very soft bristles and longer bristles that I use to clean like my car vents, and I could use them to clean stuff like this. But again, like just the space in front of me, I don't want that full fire department layout anymore. So again, I've kept the trucks that are meaningful to me, but the other ones, like I had these in a box for the last year. So I'm not gonna miss those. So that was one thing. If they don't sell at the rummage sale, I'm gonna sell them as a set. I'm not gonna look to piecemeal them out, but I'll put them on eBay, and I'm very confident they'll sell, especially because I can put them in a small box. The shipping will be reasonable. So what else I had going today was I did tackle the furnace room, which is on the other side of the wall as direction I'm looking. And in the furnace room that's where it's also my firewood I store in that room. My second pantry is in that room. So it's a large room. And I had wanted to get to that one for a while, and I don't have a lot of stuff in there. But I wanted to go through and to sort what I had in there and toss and organize. Especially in the pantry, there were some things that had expired, and I made sure to kind of like put things in priority that I'll use. But I filled up a garbage can, like what like a 40-gallon, garbage container. So it's not the size of a 50-gallon drum, a little smaller, but not much smaller. And one of the things like I got rid of were old carpet remnants, where it might be like a 4x5 piece of carpet or, something like that. And I had always kept, so after we had different flooring projects done, I always kept extra in case, like, well, what if something gets spilled on a carpet, right? And then let's go back. eBay, but yeah, I think those trucks as a set, and if I took a lot of pictures, I have to stop at the post office and ask them like about the box. Because the post office has certain size boxes that whatever you can get in that, like it'll ship for that price. So if I knew that, because this box is not very big, and I could go in and properly, put padding in there, for the trucks and stuff like that. I would I would guess on eBay that would sell for, you know, north of $25, because again, I've seen the competitive bids out there for like just individual ones. Now there aren't any boxes, but that doesn't seem to be a problem. Um, and like if I was out there and kind of looking for these, I would definitely, I would, I mean, some of these I didn't pay like a lot, but I'm sure I paid, maybe $12, $15 for a couple of these. So yeah, I'll see what I want to do. I don't want to go through kind of a lot of process with this. I just kind of want to be rid of them. So anyway, going into the furnace room, I had these pieces of carpet, and I was like, you know what? In my entire life, I've never had to use a piece of spare carpet to rescue something that happens to one of our carpets. We don't have much carpet in the house anymore anyway. And we don't have anything that's new for carpets. So I'm like, well, if this goes bad, like I'll just replace it. So, that's kind of my philosophy on the carpet thing. So I was able to clean out a lot of carpet remnants. Now I do have like tile, from when we had the bathrooms done over the last, few years, and that I'm keeping, because if there was something to happen with a broken tile or whatever, I want to be able to have like the tile I can match up to that. But otherwise, get rid of the carpet. So that's just something. It was one of these things too. It was like, just practically in my life, I've never had a situation where like keeping spare pieces of carpet has been something that I've been like, oh, like, yeah, I've used it. No, it just like stays. So that was one thing. And then, I was able to get rid of a lot of other kind of smaller things like door rails. I had some door, insulation, some stick-in door insulation, peel and stick. And first of all, that stuff isn't very expensive. So if I wanted to like redo that, but it felt a little tacky and stuff. And I'm sure like after a number of years, it just doesn't work the same. So I just toss it. I did also find like I had a relative like 3 years ago who owns his own HVAC business, sent me insulation to go for my air conditioner outside to the house, because the current insulation on that is very old and it's like falling apart and stuff like that. And I never installed it, but I can't do it now because it's raining, right? And it's going to be humid this week, so it's not going to be ideal. So it's really more of like a September project to go up. But I'm like, well, I need to use this. I need to get the stuff that's on there, take it off, and put this other stuff. I found like brand new electrical tape that I hadn't used, still in the containers. So I'm like, well, I need to cycle this into the rotation. I found some Gorilla tape that was new, consolidated all my like glues and got rid of the ones that were older. And I had kept boxes. I put in some new lighting in that furnace room. And then, that was a few years ago, maybe like 3 years ago. I kept some boxes. So I just like took and scanned a portion of the box and then made sure I had like the UPC. And then I would just write like where I got it from, Menards or whatever, in the year, because you're not going to be able to match it up anymore. And then I just put the piece of paper in my file, which now says lights, and got rid of the box. So, but yeah, it felt good to get rid of stuff. That room is pretty much done right now. Again, there wasn't a ton in there. It just needed to be cleaned. Like I had to do a lot of sweeping because with the firewood down there, the floor gets dirty, just little dirt that comes off of the firewood or just particulate stuff. So yeah, I think I'm going to put in some lighting right as I come into that room. The first like 4 feet don't have a light, and then the rest of it's very well lit. I put in several lights, like I said, about 3 years ago, but um, I would be able to do it, would work perfect. There's a certain light that's at Menards. It's pretty cheap, pretty cheap too, like a shop light. They're all LED now. And that's what I would do is I would put that in. So I'm thinking about it. So anyway, like thinning down the office, thinning down what's in front of me. And I still think I want to go from 3 to 2 as far as my coffee mugs. Although I don't know which one, like I don't want to get rid of any of these. I don't know who gave me the Lambeau Field one. You can't run in a microwave. So, but the rooftop life raft, that was from Robert, and my Wisconsin tin cup I like. So, I don't know. But there's nothing kind of standing out right now on the desk that I would get rid of. Salt, so, but yeah, as we talk about today's show, so yeah, it's raining again. We didn't have rain for a long time. And then, yesterday after I mowed, so I kind of rushed in the morning to mow the lawn, and it was, quasi drought. Lawn was drying up, and but we had some spots that were still growing, and I was like, well, I want to get this done before it rains. And then, it didn't rain much yesterday, and I was like, oh, so that's not good because I cut on a lower setting. But then, and since then we've had some pretty sustained rains and everything is greening up. So like that was a good move. So I wanted to get that done. But if you've seen like the news, like the Milwaukee, Wisconsin area, had like a foot of rain, 16 inches, in the last 24 hours, massive flooding. I think Wauwatosa, those areas, which aren't close to me, about 2 hours away and south of me. So like there won't be rain coming through. I live in the Wisconsin River, or the city's on the Wisconsin River. I live on a hill. But where I'm at, we've just had normal rain. Like there isn't flooding or standing water or anything like that. Plus, Ron Wayne is saying, I used to save everything. So, wow. Yeah. And then, draw a line and unloaded a lot of stuff. And Misty Mrs. Wayne. Oh my goodness. Might have had a little bit of a role in making that happen. So, yeah, I think it's good to have things, but then also, I'm really at a point where I don't want anything more than what I have. For example, I'm not teaching at the university this fall. So it's basically, it's like a sabbatical for me. And I have all of these really nice dry erase markers. And like, you have to order these, they're larger nib. So they're more bold. You can't buy these like at Walmart. And said, these are unopened, and I had them ready for the fall. I had ordered them back in, like spring. And I was like, well, by the time I get to these, the university is really moving away from the in-person to the online format anyway. But I'm like, well, these things aren't going to do me any good. And so I literally I put them all in a big Ziploc bag, and I walked to the school district office, which is not far from where I live. And I said, here, like most of these are new and they're actually pretty expensive. These bold, dry erase markers. And I've used these before, and do what you want with them. They're my gift to you. And because like, what am I going to do with those? But I went through and it got rid of so much, and also with computer cords, just redundancy. I'm like, why do I need 3 power cords that all plug into my PC, right? So that was big to go through and to really thin things out. Like I had kept tires, a backup set of tires for my bike. Well, I didn't bike this year at all. And to buy a new tire, so I do Pan Racers on my bike, which are made in Japan. They're like $60 a piece, the tire. So it's like, well, it doesn't make sense to keep a old set of tires that have wear on them. You would just go and buy a new tire. So, I got rid of those, and it just, and in my furnace room, I logically kind of reorganized things. That was a big part of the last like few weeks of just logically, like the file cabinets, so like all the home appliances are like in one area, the outdoor, yard stuff, the snow blower, the string trimmer, mower, all of that's filed in one area. And I also then had like a portable electric heater that I put a hook behind my furnace and hung it up there, because logically it just seemed like that was a good place. There was nothing back there on that stud, so I just put it in. But yeah, it's one of these things where I just do not want any more things. So I don't know if you get to that point, in life, or I still have way too much. And most of it is maybe stuff that I inherited, again, like toolboxes or just other things. But I'm like, I just have too much stuff. So, yeah, I don't know how to kind of approach that, but I've done a pretty good downsizing, kind of so far, in downsizing and organizing. And I do think for this upcoming year, I'm going to go with a little less firewood, because I still have over a cord left. And part of it is, I was thinking about this the other day. So one thing is the Socratic method. So the Socratic method is basically like talking to yourself, talking out loud, solving a problem by just talking and listening to yourself. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a problem, but the Socratic method. So you got to be kind of careful of that, because otherwise people are just like, that person's talking to themselves. So, but nowadays they're like, oh, I guess they just have a headset, or they have some, whatever. But anyway, I was like, well, my youngest daughter will be a sophomore in high school, and my oldest daughter's in college. And so like when we had the fires, the kids really liked the fires. So then, the fireplace room would be really warm. And, but, they're not around as much anymore. And my youngest daughter, with her sports and school stuff, a lot of that will go later, especially the sports stuff. So, you're not getting home until 10 o'clock. So, or like, we're not going to get home. Like, we'll be at a game, right? So I'm not going to have a fire going if I'm not here. So I thought, well, I probably have 10 days this upcoming year where we won't have fires, because we won't be here until, past, like 9 o'clock or so. And at that point, I wouldn't typically start a fire, because, I'm going to bed and things like that. So, anyway, I was just kind of doing the math, and I was like, well, we probably have 10 days where, we're not going to be getting home until 9, 10 or later at night. And at that time, we're not going to be starting a fire. So we take those days out of the mix, and the fact too that the girls are around less. So I think just one of the things is, just we'll have, and that's not significantly like lowering the number of fires, but I'm going to do a cord less of firewood. Ron Wayne, I answer myself every now and then. So yeah, the Socratic method is actually very, very good. I use the Socratic method all the time when I walk. Well, I shouldn't say all the time. I have 2 walking routes. One is very user friendly for the Socratic method because you usually don't have people around you. And then the other one is more busy and active. So then it seems a little odd. So like I don't tend to talk to myself when I walk past people. I live a few blocks from the high school track. So years ago, I used to go out on a high school track and walk, try to do like 3 miles, 12 laps. And then I would just like talk through things. That was mostly kind of like when I was doing book stuff. So I would talk through as I was like putting chapters together, and then I would always like come up with ideas. And then I had a app I downloaded for my phone called Sound Recorder. And then I would like go in and do like a 1 minute, hey, like here's what I should do for like this chapter or whatever, and then go back and play it. But it is very healthy to do the Socratic method, and no one really talks about it, right? So, but to just talk to yourself of what your thoughts are, and again, it's probably kind of geared toward problem solving, but it doesn't have to be like a problem. It could just be like what you're thinking of like doing the next week, right? And you're kind of putting that out there, and maybe there's something of how you're going to organize your days or whatever. But I never find I'm at a loss of words when I'm out there doing my walks. So the fire trucks will be gone one way or another. And then, I found a lot of cool stuff too in the furnace room that I hadn't been using. Like I have a really nice Makita tool belt, and it's in perfect shape. And I'm like, wow, I haven't used it. I'm not going to get rid of it because it is something I would use if I had some project that I was doing outside or in the garage or whatever. And I do have some things, or even if I was like not power washing, but like soft washing the house and stuff like that, it'd be nice to have some of the things, available, different rags and stuff like that I could just kind of use. But yeah, I found some cool stuff that I didn't kind of know that I still had. So, and then I also found stuff like, here's parts of a ceiling fan. I'm like, well, and here's a balancer for a ceiling fan. I'm like, well, I'm not going to use that, and just toss it out. So, but yeah, I think it's really important to do that. I've another room I need to get to, and go through some things, but I'm not going to do that this year. I'm kind of like hit my threshold of tolerating, the time to sort and clean. Like the office here was a major project, easily 25 hours on the file cabinets and just going through everything else, getting that. And then in the furnace room, the time, and now I've got like another room where I have some computer boxes and parts. And actually I'm glad that I kept those, like the box for my motherboard and all of that, because like that was necessary to cross-reference that when some of these updates were done in the summer. Actually, the tech guy's like, thank God you have this box, because then we could pull off the exact like way that the board is laid out and stuff like that. I'm like, yeah, this stuff I won't get rid of. But I do have some other stuff in there though that I do want to get rid of. And like one thing I did was I grouped all of the Halloween stuff together today. And, some of it was in different places, the outside decorations, and I'm like, nope, it's like all right here now. So, but yeah, it's taking the time to organize and to go through. And I had this big box of light bulbs, and a number of them are still incandescent, but I went and I like tested every single light bulb and they all worked. Right. So I'm like, well, I'm keeping these. But I did have some like globe light bulbs, and I'm like, I don't know where I use these in the house, but I know that I don't use these now. So like obviously we'll get rid of those. Those might even go in the free bin. But yeah, there's always stuff to get rid of. And I think you can kind of go in two directions when you get older. So one is you start to acquire more stuff. Like I can't tell you how many of our neighbors, like their garage is just filled with stuff, and it's not filled with a car, it's filled with boxes of stuff, and it just becomes kind of a extension of a storage space. And my garage isn't like that, and I don't want my house to be like that. And so I think there's two directions you kind of go in as you get older. Is you acquire a lot of stuff because you're not getting rid of it. You're inheriting things from like other people who pass on or they move away. So I helped a friend of mine move to Arizona about 10 years ago. And I remember she had this big storage unit, and it was like her brother and a couple of friends, and I was there. And it was a big storage unit. And she moved with her sister to Arizona. And we went item by item through and a lot of it was, books and furniture. And I remember like she said, well, I have like some shovels and, like there's an ice breaker, which, I live in Wisconsin. Like these, can you use these things? But I have them already. And she's like, do you want anything here? And I'm like, actually, no, it's all nice, but like I have these things. I don't need more of them. So Mr. and Mrs. Wayne, I always end up making a bigger mess when I start going through stuff. I eventually get it done. It just might take me a few days. Yeah, when I hear you. When I started like doing the file cabinet stuff down here, I didn't know where that was going to go. Like, I didn't know what I would all find. I kind of knew, but then like I was putting it into like, again, here's outside stuff, here's appliances, here's, different work things and whatever, medical. And you're just trying to figure out some system, and then you're finding something filed somewhere else that it shouldn't be. And then it's like, well, where did that go? And then it really was chaotic. And then to see all of these empty folders, all these files, like maybe 70 or 80 next to me. And eventually then when I got everything filed, then I went file by drawer and kind of resorted again and categorized. And that worked out really well. And then I went through my files and I got rid of a lot of them that just weren't in very good shape anymore. And I also was like, in my life, am I going to need more than 30 more files? And my conclusion was, I don't think so. I mean, in any year, I'm not really creating more than 1 or 2 files. And the fact is, I'll probably have some files that I won't be using anymore. Like when our daughters, get a little older and move out and stuff, then, so, it's one of those things too, is I just don't need this stuff. And you find stuff too, like, here's paint. What does this go to? And then can we keep a smaller jar instead of the whole container, and then put cat litter, mixed in, and then whatever's left dries up and you can get rid of it. But, just finding things like that. And I still have more stuff than what I need. Like if you look back at my books back there, and I have a bookshelf on the other side, I haven't read any of those in a long time, like years, but I'm going through the titles and I'm like, yeah, I mean, I should actually go back in. There was a point probably around 2014, 2015, when I made a point to read books like, 2 to 3 times a week. And I felt, that was very enriching. So I might do that again. I don't know. But like there's a there's a book that I have called Lost Person Behavior, and it's a study of, so, people who are elderly, children, people with autism, um, and then I have another book that a friend gifted me of like um, analysis of caving accidents for cavers, because he's a caver. He said this is released like every year, and read through this because they do a really good job of describing the situation. And was it because like, how did it set up? The person didn't have someone with them, or it was like hypothermia or whatever, and what could have been done different, and the rescuers. And it was pretty fascinating because when you kind of like get outside of your field and analyze things. And I'd like, like Civil War, I have a number of Civil War and kind of like Wisconsin history books. So, and today when I was going through the furnace room on my phone, I had a video documentary of the Lincoln Highway, which I'm kind of interested in just playing. It, obviously I wasn't watching it, but just so I could listen along as I was doing stuff. So, but yeah, I feel good about how I have less things now. It's funny, in the furnace room, I have a large barrel. So it is like a 55-gallon drum, but it's like a heavy fiberboard, but then it's like steel on the bottom. Doesn't have a lid. And I bought it for like $5. It was on Craigslist a couple of years ago in summer, and this guy had this barrel listed, and I was looking for a barrel like that was fiber, basically like a really heavy cardboard barrel, right? Because I wanted to store my kindling in it, and you can't put kindling in a plastic barrel because if there's any moisture in the kindling, it doesn't dry out very well. And then also if the humidity changes in the house or the furnace room, and you have plastic, it doesn't breathe. So it's a bad way to store kindling. But this barrel that I purchased was perfect. So I remember I pulled up to the guy's house, and he wasn't there, but his wife was there. And she's like, "Oh, I can't tell you how glad I am that this is finally out of our garage." So I'm like, I could have said, "Oh, I'm just going to leave if you're not going to give me this for $0." But it turned out to be exactly what I needed. And I put all my kindling in there, and it's just perfect for that purpose. And because it's round, you can easily move it. You just tilt it, and you can move it to any place you want downstairs, even if it's really heavy. It's not very taxing to do that. So, Ron's, what you do is bury everything in the backyard. Have a plaque set in a small square of concrete saying "time capsule." Holy smokes, Ron. Could do that. Our backyard also has Native American artifacts in it, which is true. So digging in our backyard, you never know what you're going to find. Wow. Yeah, one time, so I remember when they were demolishing the school, the K-8 elementary school that I attended. It was built in, I think, 1908. It could have been before that, but there was a concrete marker on a section as they were tearing it down because it had been added on to many times over the years. And as you worked your way back in this building, as they were demolishing it, they revealed a wall, and it had this big concrete marker. And I think it said whatever, the school 1908, and it was in great shape. And they actually took that out and they put it on the side of the property. So like where the playground was, like all that was removed, and then they kind of set it over there. And I thought, oh, like that would be really perfect if they would take that and put it by the new school, like put something out front. I think it's kind of just a cool piece of history. And I came back the next day and I saw them with like a backhoe, and they were like smashing it because I think they thought something was inside of it possibly. So I was like, oh, that was a big waste. So, yeah, that was actually, look at this. That explains the orbs. So, yeah, this is, there's a lot of stories about like haunted stuff in the town, but haven't really encountered that here. So, Ron, after we moved here, the house originally when we moved in had a backboard. There was no longer a hoop. It was on the garage. The garage was cedar. Like I said, the house looks significantly different than it looks now. Much darker looking and kind of aged. And like, when we redid the outside of it and went with a kind of a lighter tan and just modernized it. But anyway, bats lived in back of the backboard. There was a lot of bats. So took the backboard off and the bats are gone. And I always felt bad about that because I thought, well, the bats are eating the mosquitoes. When we moved down here, mosquitoes were always a big thing because there's marshland very close to us and the Wisconsin River. And I remember that and was one thing people would say, oh, the mosquitoes. And that really hasn't been that big of an issue the last few years. But like when I first was here, they would go up and down the streets with a mosquito fogging truck. So literally the whole neighborhood would just be this white fog. So, but in the backyard, I got like a 6x6 post and I put in I think it was a 6x6. Yeah. And I ordered a bat house and I put that at the back of the property. And I thought maybe bats will inhabit this. We'll get the bats back and they'll eat the mosquitoes. And that never happened. Actually, like bees overtook it. So it became this massive beehive. But then when I was digging that out with a post hole digger by hand, so, you get down like 3 feet and suddenly you're pulling up like shards of pottery. Truly, this is true. So I'm like, well, again, because I'm in the Indian Hills subdivision, you go back on the maps 200 years. Not even 200 years, like less than that. This was an encampment for the Winnebago. So I'm finding like not a lot of stuff, but then I just like put it back in the hole, put the post down, and there was nothing. I mean, it's so common in this area. My neighbor, he passed away. He was 96, passed away a year and a half ago, but he was on like the city council and had lived here his whole life. And he was telling me, oh yeah, like, it was very common through like the 60s and 70s when they were kind of developing these subdivisions and just throughout the town that you'd find skeletons and other like artifacts. And, and they had like a process for it. Like it was so common that the city would tell you, when you had building permits and land development, hey, there's a chance you're going to find this and contact this person. And if you do, and, but yeah, it was, so where my youngest daughter has her performing arts, her theater, like every fall, she's a part of a community play that's put on by youth. That building, I think it was built in the 1850s and it was built on top of a cemetery, which was then allegedly moved, but as they were adding onto the Performing Arts Center in the last 2-3 years, they found burials, because headstones have been moved, but not bodies. So then just relocate them. But yeah, it is kind of a weird thing around here. And they have a big project going on downtown right now where they're digging up and putting in like new water and sewer. And it's down pretty far, like 20, 25 feet. Now I wonder like what they find and or if they're really looking or if they're not looking. Because like 15 years ago when they were doing other work downtown, they found the original community well. And that was documented to be around like the late 1840s that this well existed. And then people would go to the well to get your water. And then they found it. And I went down there with my regular 35 millimeter camera and was able to take some pictures of it. I don't know where the pictures are. But I remember like going down there because it made like the front page of our newspaper back when you got newspapers. And then they just filled it in and they like built over top of it because they're like, well, you know, what are we going to do with it? So Ron is saying a lot of arrowheads around here. Wow. Okay. Wow. Yeah, I never found any arrowheads, although like I never looked. And so like this new subdivision that's going in, when I walk through there, soil's always being turned over, and that's new. Like that had never been, that had been woods and that had never been developed. I'm guessing there's stuff out there, and I don't know if people really find it, if it stands out or if they don't. Because if you're not looking for it, right, you're not going to, it's not going to stand out. But if you are looking for it, so yeah, I think it is kind of cool. So, but anyway, it's just one of those things. When I grew up, we had a farm, and my brother would find like arrowheads and stuff. Again, I never found any. You'd be rock picking and stuff like that, and I guess I was never looking. Like I probably passed over some, and I think he found a carved, I'm pretty sure of this, like a bird out of stone. I don't know if he still has or what happened to that. That would have been Native American Ojibwe or Ho-Chunk, where we had lived, where the farm was, which was close to a river. So yeah, again, like just, I didn't really pay attention to things. When I was at Fort Winnebago as a tour guide, somebody had assembled a display of arrowheads so that they had found on their property not too far away from the fort, and then donated that to the fort, and they have it on display in the main building where they give the tours. So, and I would guess like that was probably donated in the 40s or 50s. And it probably has easily 50 arrowheads and flints on it. So pretty cool stuff. But yeah, I haven't found anything. So I think coming back to when you get older, right? I guess, 54, you get to a point where you either start downsizing or you just like start accumulating. And another thing is like, I don't want to, and I think I've shared this before. So like if I was gone tomorrow, something happened to me, right? Car accident, heart attack, whatever it is. But like everything down here would largely be sold. I mean, because this whole computer setup and this system, I mean, my family wouldn't be using any of this. They, ultimately would have, I mean, right, you would keep some things, but they would have little purpose for probably most of the things that are down here. So, this would just be gone. And I'm very aware of that. So it is pretty typical, right? I mean, it's one of those things where you see people assemble these pretty incredible collections of what it could be, fire trucks, or it could be their HO railroad set, or, like a Jay Leno collecting cars or whatever. But there's a point where you can't really maintain that anymore, or you get to a point if something happens to you, like who becomes the caretaker of that stuff, and do they really want it? And yeah, it's just a reality. It's not to be like unfeeling or anything like that. It's just it's a reality. So so that's one of the things when I worked in the office, over the last couple of months was, I upgraded technology because that's for me. That stuff needed to be done, but I wasn't adding things into the office. I thinned down a lot of stuff out of the office. And it's just this redundancy of, if I have more than one thing, let's get rid of it. So yeah, I don't know what to, I don't know what to make of it. So Ron is saying, yeah, it's wise to plan ahead, very logical. And a few of my friends have also said, for example, like their parents have passed. So, they've had experiences on both sides where they'll go up and the house is just full of stuff, because things weren't properly addressed and downsized over the years, right? So, and unorganized. So, they're trying to just find out what's there, and then what are they going to do with this stuff? I'll never forget when I was growing up, we had some people, elderly couple, they were probably in their 70s, and I was maybe like 20, maybe 18, 20. And they didn't live too far from us, but I remember one of them passed. And I think the other one then moved into like a condo or something. And they had a dumpster outside of the house. And I remember the dumpster they just filled up with most things from the house. And I remember like women's purses, shoes, all of that stuff was in there, clothing, maybe stuff that maybe could have been donated, who knows, but I just remember it was a very weird feeling, this heap of very personal belongings. But you can't take it with you. Like, and, I had one relative who went from a house, to being hospitalized and then to assisted living into, basically what was a studio apartment from a house. And then having to get rid of everything, because the reality was they would not be going back into a house. So yeah, it's odd too, because as I was sharing, we have some really unique and well-made furniture. We have an Amish community about 20 miles from us, and they built a lot of things for us. And it was always an interesting process, because you'd go out to their shops, and then you'd put down your money, and I drew out like a lot of stuff that I wanted, and then they would build it. And you'd get a postcard like 6 months later saying, hey, it's done. And then you'd go out there, and then they would have some way to arrange like that it would be delivered. But anyway, we were talking to our daughters of saying like this kitchen table, like that, China hutch, and then the 1-bedroom set, if you were to buy those today, first of all, I don't think you'd get the quality. But I mean, the cost that you'd be looking at, but then, they're like, okay, but like, what are we going to do with these things? And I kind of am at that point with my parents. So my mom and dad are in their 80s. They have a large house, much larger than mine. And, it's me and my brother, and my dad was saying, like, all right, who wants the trailer? Because, their 2 vehicles don't have a trailer, and they're not going to use the trailer again. And then he said, is anyone interested in the canoe? He bought this aluminum canoe when he was 18, and, he did trips with his dad. And then, the 2 of us did a lot of trips and had a lot of great memories. And I'd be like, I'd love to take it, but I don't have a place to keep it. It's very large. My garage isn't that big. I'd have to pay to store it. I can't really set it on the side of my house, and I'm not going to use it. So as awesome as it is, like, that has to end unless my brother takes it. But it's kind of a reality. He's older than I am. Like, he's likely not going to use it either. So you have this kind of sadness in a way to see these things go. But it's also kind of strange. Think of pictures, right? Like, I think my parents have like one photo album of like me, and it's from birth to like 18. And then like, the way that we are today and taking pictures of family events, and because it's so easy to do on a phone, is you can have thousands of pictures. I mean, do you really print off that many? No, but so like pictures were pretty rare when I was growing up. So like to keep a picture album isn't as big of a thing, but like today, like how do you pass that on? If that makes any sense, I don't know. But so even like my bike, so I have my bike, and my daughter has a Haro Haro mountain bike, which is a very nice mountain bike. Bought that from a shop for her, like kind of right at the end of like the time when she was biking with me. Like we used to do biking, and she was like 10 or 11, and she outgrew her bike, and so we went and we got this, and this was like a big step up. Really nice bike, has like shock suspension that's adjustable, and like spring shock, so it'll never wear out. Like a cylinder in a chair, not that type of. And just a really nice bike. And she rode it probably like 5 times, and so like she'll never use that bike. And my other daughter, I'm like, "Are you going to use this bike?" And she's like, "I don't think so." So I'm like, it's not a bike because I paid a lot for it and it's in great shape. I'm not going to put it in a garage sale and try to get rid of it for $25 when it was a $400 bike and it's great. At the same time though, like, what am I going to do with this bike? Or like, is that something you keep and think, well, to pass that bike on possibly within the family, that would be an awesome bike for some kid to get, although it is more or less a girl's bike. But I don't really know anybody or relatives that could use something like that. But I mean, I would feel bad in that case of like just getting rid of it for the sake of like getting rid of it. I would think that bike, at least until I would be forced, like if we had to downsize and move into a condo or something or whatever, then obviously the bike would be gone. But I don't know, and it's one of those things, I guess I could list on a Craigslist and then just see if anyone was interested in it. But even like my bike, for example, like, I'll come back to that. So Ron's saying, we're going through the same with my parents currently. It's rough, but we know deep down it's necessary. Yeah. And Ron, I think that is really tough. So again, in a couple of my friends have had experiences where the downsizing has already happened because the parents moved into a apartment, right? Or some type of assisted living or some senior community. So they already got rid of their stuff. Or they left Wisconsin. So they also got rid of their winter clothes. So they just have like a Florida wardrobe or whatever. But yeah, otherwise you just end up with a lot of stuff. And I know that, for example, like with my parents, my brother and I, my parents, we sat down last year to kind of talk through this of saying, eventually, like, how do you want us to be a part of this? Because again, they have a large home. I mean, bigger than either of our homes and a lot of things. And I'm just like, how do you, and I don't know. And I mean, it's just one of those things, I guess, that we would have to kind of do that. So Missy said, I don't know why they split bikes into girl and boy bikes. They could have built them just different colors. Yeah. Ron's very agreeable tonight. Yeah. No, the Haro bike a boy could ride that. Like the color scheme doesn't go one way or another. And actually, like the newer bikes are being more built like a girl's bike for the walk through, the step through the bike. So that's kind of that's interesting. That was pointed out to me by my neighbor, who is like the cyclist who, bikes from Wisconsin to Texas and stuff like that. He's like, yeah, a lot of the new bikes are just built this way. Especially e-bikes are built to be like walk through, but just in general, bikes are being built more what we would have thought of as a girl's bike. 30 years ago, it's more bikes are just being built kind of in that style. It's a cool bike. Like I've taken that bike out and it is like, I could ride it. Like it's not too small for me. And with the suspension and the wider tires, it's kind of fun. But like, again, I'm not that those days are kind of like behind me. But I look at my bike and I was looking through it tonight and, like I've got the pack on the back and then all the tools in case something happens and like a splint and just the way that the bike has been set up over, my, I don't know, I've had the bike 13, 14 years that I've used it and have rebuilt it and evolved it. And I'm just like, there's nobody that will take this bike, right? Like it'll just be given away or sold. Most likely it would be given away if I'm not here. Eventually they'd be like, is there anyone in the second, third, fourth tier family who is interested in this bike? And someone be like, oh, sure. And I guess I can't feel bad about that. It's just a reality. I mean, that's the way that some things worked. Actually, one of my bike pumps for the tire, I had a really nice bike pump and it worked its way to me because the person who had it, a distant relative ended up in a nursing home and passed on. And so it's a really nice pump that's made to mount on the bike, very concise and all that. And so there were some different bike things and they're like, do you want any of this? And I'm like, well, yeah, I'll take the pump. So, Misty, some of my bikes as a kid were boy bikes. My dad would find bikes that were broken and build a new one out of all those. Wow. I had a really cool dirt bike with mag wheels, but it was like assembled from other bikes. My friend Mickey, who was my age, his dad had a shop on the back of their house. So he was out literally like with a blowtorch cutting old bikes apart and like welding them together. So that was a cool bike that was made of other bikes. And then I had it. The only problem was like nothing was adjustable. Like the handlebars were welded on. The seat was like I welded on like all the height. And it was heavy because it was all metal, but it looked really cool. So yeah, it's kind of weird because like my bike now, it started out as a Trek 7.4, but I mean, I had custom wheels made for it. And then I had a pretty big accident with the bike. I don't know when that was. And then a lot of the bike had to be rebuilt with different components. And so like, it's this hybrid bike right now. The Ghostbusters bike, I think there's only one photo that exists of that. And next time I visit my parents, I need to go through the photo album and actually just take a digital picture of it. Yeah, when I built the Ghostbusters bike, so Ghostbusters came out in 84. So I was 12 or 13, depending upon somewhere. So I took my 10-speed bike and I took it downstairs in our shop and redesigned the bike. I took a lot of conduit pipe and made brackets that would go from the frame and go up to the front and then over to the back. So basically I added a lot of weight to the bike and it probably wasn't very stable, but, I had a CB radio. This is true. I had a CB radio. I made up my own electrical panel. I had all these toggle switches. And I wired everything and I labeled it. So it'd be like front lights. And then I ordered through JC Whitney. So you probably remember this, but I had a JC Whitney catalog, which is the car parts, and they had red lights that would operate on 4D batteries, but red rotating lights, magnetic lights that you could put on top of your car. And I ordered 2 of those, and I had to take my money to the post office to get a postal order, mail order. And then, because my parents would have never approved that. And then these 2 red lights show up at the house, and they worked great. They were heavy. And so I put those on the front, and I had a siren, and then I had CB radio. This was all like in front of me. And I had quite a few lights. That, and then in the back, I made a Ghostbusters backpack, which I mounted on the back. And I actually have a cut. I had a cut here because when I was cutting something on to put the backpack together, I put a deep cut in my finger, and it never healed up. I was like at a basketball camp the next day, and there's blood all over the place. So I'd go to the doctor, and they stitch it up. But the bike looked awesome. And I had all these generators, because back in the day, you could buy a light set for a bike that would be powered off the wheels. So you would just click, and it would take a little, a little gear, and it would press against your tire, the outside of your tire, in friction, and it would turn the gear, and it would light up the lights. So part of it was battery operated, and part of it was through this electrical system. And then I put a lot of generators on this bike, and that would wear down the tires too. But I had it so I could like activate it all at once. And anyway, this bike was pretty awesome. And I remember taking it up to the baseball diamond a block away when I got it kind of done. And like everyone just came around the bike, and they were like, holy smokes. And, show me this thing. How does this work? Whatever. And wow. And I didn't paint it, the Night Rider, or a Night Rider bike. Wow. That is awesome. Yeah, Ron, I miss the days we made our own toys. Yeah, nobody helped me with that. My parents knew that I was doing it because I was in the basement, and I had parts of it like all over the place, and I was feeling, for as young as I was, like I felt I did a really good job of like wiring this up and having its own control panel. And looking back, that was pretty sophisticated for a kid my age to wire this up and to build these custom brackets. Like I would take conduit, flatten down an end, and then like twist it in a vise and stuff like that, and then take wood and plywood and make like the base brackets, and take like the milk crates and like either use them full or like saw them down or do whatever I had to do. But it certainly looked cool. But it was like super, super heavy. And then that bike eventually, I took it down. We lived on a town that had a hill, really big hill. It's Main Street, goes up. And I started to go down Main Street, and the bike, the bike started to get out of balance. And I had the generators going, and then the bike the brakes were all metal. So you're just reaching down and you pull up, 10-speed bike, and the bike became electrified through this process of the generators. So every time I would grab the brakes, I would get shocks and like pretty substantial. And so just with that whole combination, and I'm going down this hill, and my friends are down, and it was George's Market, which was our grocery store in town. And that's where it kind of leveled off. And then you would keep going. Eventually you get to the bridge, and then it'd be like you go down even further. But and I'm just flying, and I'm realizing like I have no way to stop the bike, and the bike is heavy and it has this momentum, and then it starts to kind of get the death wobble, because again the bike is not really, it's symmetrical, but it's really not balanced, like weight wise. Like, I don't know what bike that was, Huffy or the Schwinn, but I'm sure when they designed that, they were not taking into consideration, well, there's going to be some kid who's going to retrofit this bike with about 80 pounds worth of equipment, and is also going to like widen the bike out to 30 inches. And so I lost control of the bike when I was coming down toward George's Market. And all I remember is that I fell off the bike. The bike started to tip over, and I didn't fall like forward. I just fell off the bike, and the bike then just continued its own skid. And then it ended up kind of like flipping. Like I wasn't watching the whole demise of the bike, and it ended up in George's Market and just a wooden wall that faced the sidewalk, and it just like everything flew up against this wall. There's like bits of this bike were everywhere, and I was, for the most part, like, okay, like no broken bones, no really bad scrapes or anything. And it was just kind of like I had just like set the bike down, and then like I kind of like rolled to a stop, and the bike like just did this sideways skidding. And my friends were like, holy smokes. And I remember my friend Chris Radke, who saw the friends who saw the whole thing. Then they checked, and they're like, are you okay? And I'm like, yeah. And they're like, well, let's check the bike. The bike was just destroyed. And I remember them gathering up parts of the bike, and they brought it back. And I had parts of it too. And we brought it back to the house, and that was it. Like there was really nothing salvageable from that. It just all had to be tossed. I don't know what I did for a bike after that either. We had a couple bikes. I might have just used that dirt bike that was made by Mickey. But the thing was, the bike was so awesome because like I had it for, a couple of weeks before its demise. So like at night, and I had to do like auxiliary kickstands. Like I had to put like 3 kickstands on the bike, and I had to like build out a bracket on the kickstand so the bike wouldn't just like tip over, and all of that worked fine. But at night, like to throw all the lights on the bike, it looked amazing. Like I remember like just like, throwing the red lights on and everything else, and just standing 20 feet away, and then the bike had the siren on it, and I was like, but visually this thing was stunning, probably more so at night than during the day. But even with that, and then I'm like, oh man. So Ron's like, that's rough. It was rough. The thing is, I wish I had more pictures of it. I wish my parents would have said, well, hey, let's take a few pictures of this, because like I said, I know there's one picture of it, and I don't know if the picture's really great. Misty Mrs. Wayne is like, I'm going to bed. So I appreciate your time. I know it's late. I'm going to go to bed before long too. It officially is my daughter's birthday because it's 12:03. Sounded like it was awesome. It was awesome. Yeah. So the Ghostbusters bike. So yeah, so tomorrow is my daughter's birthday. She'll be 19. So I remember, oh my goodness, when she was born and the nurse handed me to her, and I remember just crying because I couldn't get over that. Holy smokes. Like, this is my daughter. And yeah, that was really something. And then, yeah, thinking back, to all the things like when she was younger that we did. I remember the first time she had her solid food, which was like this rice pudding, and she used to climb up into her high chair. She used to be like, "Food coming, food coming," and we would go to these to the parks and stuff, and we took her in the wagon, and and we'd fill it up with her critters, like her, Sesame Street critters and stuff like that, or stuff. And she would toss them out, but we weren't always aware that things were being tossed out. Like if we were in front and pulling, so we had to change it up. So one of us was always like in back to catch if an Elmo got tossed out. And when we would go up north, I'll wrap this up, and we would go up north on vacation. She would bring her street critters and she would pass them to the front. So like Big Bird would have to help drive. So you have to put him up by the steering wheel, or like the Grouch or something like that. And then it would be like handing him back and forth to the back seat. Yeah, she'd be in her car seat. She'd have, next to her little, or her stuffed animals. And then like, okay, let's turn for this one to drive. So it's Alex. So yeah, well, thanks. Yeah. 19, which is just really, and she's a college student. So, she'll be going back she'll be moving into her apartment actually the end of this week, but then, coming back. But it's been nice to have her here during the summer for the most part. I mean, she's working, she's out with her friends, and but it is going to be, it was sad initially when she left for college. I remember a year ago, because we had the sign in the yard, like, student going to UW-Madison. And I remember then when she left, taking, when she was officially like down there, then taking that sign down, and which I still have. But yeah, it's one of these things where I'm like, we probably have 1 or 2 full family vacations left. Yeah, we did again this year, and both my daughters like going up north, and they want to do it again next year, so that'll be great. But I mean, realistically, that's kind of clicking down. And it kind of gives you an insight into maybe like what your parents experienced. Like when I got older, and we stopped doing family trips. We didn't do a lot of family trips, but when you're just not around the house, like it does have a very, I'm very happy for her. Like, my other daughter, when she got her part-time job, it cut down, she works at the grocery store, so it cut down the days that we could do basketball, right? That otherwise, if the weather was good and it was a weekend and she wasn't having to do any, or it was summer, right? Didn't have schoolwork. So again, she'll be a sophomore in high school. We could just be like, hey, let's go to the court. Let's do some basketball. So now, everything has to kind of fall into place for that to happen. So you just kind of feel age like in a different level. But again, like I'm really happy for them and the things that they get to do, but you also kind of look at yourself and be like, whoa, like where did that time go? And then I think you also see it a little bit from the perspective of, I wonder if this is what my parents went through. When my brother and I were gone, we're 10 years apart. He's older than I am, or like what it was like years ago, like for their parents, but, and then they kind of stayed closer together. Like my mom and her siblings all lived pretty close together for most of their life. But yeah, I don't know. So Alex is saying, I have a niece who turned 19 this year, 2 daughters, 8 and 7 respectively. Oh my goodness, Alex. Yeah. A lot of birthdays. Happy birthday. My goodness. Going back when I was like, 19 through like 24. Like those were great years. Kind of that like early college stuff was absolutely phenomenal. Like I really enjoyed that time in life. So, well, this week I have coming to the studio. I have the new armrest or the armrest covers, but I'm looking forward to those. I have I have some labels for my label maker. It has 400, but it ran through, so I have to get more. I had to order more labels, and so that'll last for a couple of years. And then what else did I order? Let me see what I've got coming in. So label maker, not label maker label. Let me just see what I've got coming in. It throws me like ads for like Dixie plates. I'm like, I'm good. And I didn't order Dixie plates. Where are my orders? Oh, so that clock coming in. Yeah. So that'll be nice. And then that's kind of it. I've been holding off. I want to get a new pair of Hoka Bondi. They call them running shoes, but for me, they're walking shoes. But we're at the time of year where I don't want to get new shoes going into winter, because I tend to wear my shoes outdoors. So I guess I'll just wait until spring. Like I'll just use the pair that I have now. That's another thing I was going through, and I'm like, I have a couple pairs of work boots, and I really only need one at this point for like yard stuff that I do. And I've got a couple I really should just probably toss out. They're pretty worn. So very last thing. So my daughter, my youngest daughter, she was very into softball a few years ago. And I think I shared the story of how I went to get my softball glove from when I played in college and stuff like that. And my glove had just disintegrated, even though I had it stored and everything. So I went online because I was like, well, I don't know how long she's going to be interested in this. And we had, and there was a guy who was selling some baseball gloves or softball gloves. And he was like in his 60s. He was a member of a softball league. But anyway, it was like 3-4 years ago. So I got a hold of him, and it wasn't too far from where I live. And actually the place that I take my dry cleaning is the same town. So I'm like, okay, dude. And he had like every detail about the gloves. So I'm like, this guy knows what he's doing. So, and they weren't very much. So I went down and I bought like 3 gloves from him. And like, it's probably like $10 each. And I gave one to my daughter, and then I took them and conditioned them, got them all like really nice. And I had one, and then we had just a spare in case like one of her friends wanted to play or something. But I remember like this guy had cancer, and he was telling me that he was going through like treatments the last couple of years, and he had been in a softball league, and then he couldn't play softball again. His health was deteriorating, and the same thing. He was downsizing. They were selling the house, he and his wife, and then he was talking about how his kids had moved away, and that they would play softball, now and again with dad, although he was like probably, 60 and his kids were like, 40, but it was just, we had a really good talk, like in person, met up, parking lot at a Culver's, which is it's kind of like a McDonald's in our area, if you're familiar with the Culver's, but, and I just remember that. So then like, my daughter, so I had my baseball bat from when I played softball, and she had a bat that we got her, just from Walmart, and she outgrew it. So my bat she was using, but then the grips had worn off of it, just deteriorated. It was a nice bat, like an Easton bat. And then, so I said, well, I'll put new grips on it. So by the time, so she was really into softball for like, that year. And then I got the new grips ordered, and then I wound the grips on it. And then the next year she wasn't interested anymore. And so I was like, oh, so basically I said, well, here's the deal. Can we just like do softball like 2 times a summer? We'll get the gloves out. We'll go to, we have the sports fields are close to us. Just toss the ball and like you can do a little bit of hitting practice. And then I always throw it in there of saying, well, it's good for you to do some different sports things because she's really into basketball because it kind of gives you some different skills you're working on, hand-eye coordination and stuff like that. And she agrees, like she's a good sport with that. So we did that last week. And I had the first time with the retape bat, and it's the only time she'll probably ever use it, right? But I was like, that had to happen. Like that retaped bat needed to be used. She did a good job. Like, wow. Like she, I think she would be terrific if that would have been kind of her interest, but she's all basketball and she's great at that. So anyways, like these baseball gloves, and I conditioned them all this summer, but again, we did catch twice, and that will be all that we'll do. So you also have these things that I'm like, those will be gone. And then those you really don't keep because they don't maintain very well. Like they don't store very well. But I don't know. Well, anyway, I am going to get going. Thanks to Ron, thanks to Misty, thanks to Alex. And I always appreciate like listening back to these and then also reading the comments on them. It's been good. I've appreciated kind of getting the studio up and doing a little bit of this. Appreciate you. So still made for a special moment. It did. Yeah, actually it really did. And that was just Ron. I think that was like a week ago. And she knew, like my youngest daughter really does keep a tab on those things because I always tell her, I said, there's only so many, it's a finite number of days. Like you and I are going to be able to do things because, and not in like, where I'm your dad's going to be, I'm going to get to be too old or you're going to outgrow this. It's more like we're in Wisconsin, we only have so many good weather days in summer and you're not going to go out and we're not going to practice hoops in November and December because it's snow and ice and cold. And so like, if we're able to, we've got to go and do this because, you like doing hoops and things and and I said, and so those are the things like, even if you're not really feeling hoops that day, like go out and we'll shoot for 30 minutes. And if it's just not a day where it's happening, then that's fine. But maybe it turns out to be a day where we shoot for an hour and a half and it's really a lot of fun, which is usually what happens. But yeah, she was hitting and she was really doing an awesome job. So I was really happy with that. So yeah, it was good stuff. All right, everybody. Well, I'm going to get going, and I don't have a lot of big stuff on the schedule for this week. Like I said, all the sorting and cleaning is kind of done. I need a break from that right now. I got a lot accomplished. I am thinking about going over to Menards in the next day or two, and there's one area in my furnace room that needs lighting and I could wire it up myself. That's not a problem. There's actually 2 areas. There's probably 3 areas that need lighting, but there is one area. I noticed they have some lighting on sale and I'm like, yeah, when I was like going through stuff today, and I was also like double checking the wiring because there's a lot of wiring down there that I can kind of thin out. But yeah. And I get a haircut on Wednesday. So, all right, everybody, let me bring up all right, here's Ron Wayne. watching the NFL on CBS.
Holy shit, a ghost.
Ooh.
Do you mind moving out of the way? You're blocking the TV.
Oh, shit. Sorry, man.
It's okay. Thank you.